in the South. May peace and order be instilled in our nation, and may the murders and senseless killings end. We thank you for giving us another day to serve the Filipino people. As we begin our session, we pray that you watch over us, help us discover the whole truth about the questions that vex us, help us find solutions to the intractable problems facing our country. Help us to act based on a genuine desire to serve and help the people. As we proceed with the session of the Senate, we pray that we do and decide, we pray that what we do and decide will be in accordance with your will. All this we ask through our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen. Secretary, please call the roll.
Roll call of members. The Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, De Lima, Drilon, Ejercito, Escudero, Gatchalian, Gordon, Hunasan, Ontiveros, Lacson, Aligarda, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Po, Recto, Soto, Trillanes, Villanueva, Villar, Zuberi, Senate President Pimentel.
Are we suspended?
Okay na. Clear.
We're full.
With 18 senators present, the chair declares the presence of a quorum. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move that we dispense with the reading of the journal of the 7th session, Monday, August 7, 2017, and consider the same as approved.
Is there any objection to the motion? There being none, motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. We'd like to acknowledge the guests of our colleagues, guests of visitors of Senator J.V. Ejercito, the JCI of San Juan, Pinaglabanan, also the guests of Senator Pangilinan, the barangay officials and staff of San Antonio, Alicia Isabela, headed by Punong Barangay Lorenzo Lamog, and visitors of Senator Sabiri from Central Luzon State University, Dr. Baltazar, Professor Torres, and Professor Salaacan. Also, the former national ladies tennis champion, would like to welcome her, Marisa Sanchez, Mr. President. So, welcome to the Senate.
Welcome to all of our guests.
Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved. Secretary, let's proceed with the reference of business.
Message from the House of Representatives. Letter from the House of Representatives informing the Senate that on 24 July 2017 it adopted resolution number 62 entitled Resolution informing the Senate that the quorum being present, the House of Representatives has entered upon the exercise of its functions.
To the archives.
Bills on first reading. 1544, an act providing for the modernization of the Philippine National Police, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes. Senator Lacson.
To the Committees on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs, Local Government, Ways and Means, and Finance.
1545, an act institutionalizing national integrated cancer control and appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes. Senator Joseph Victor Ejercito.
Refer to the Committees on Health and Demography and Finance.
1546, an act creating primary care retraining and scholarship programs for the recruitment of qualified Filipinos who will serve as primary care workers in priority barangays, municipalities, and cities, and creating for that purpose the necessary positions of primary care providers under the compensation and position classification system, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes. Senator Grace Poe.
Refer to the Committees on Health and Demography, Civil Service, Government Reorganization, and professional regulation and finance.
1547, an act allowing women to revert to their maiden surname, establishing a procedure for the reversion, and appropriating funds therefore. Senator Maria Lourdes Nancy Binay.
Refer to the Committees on Women, Children, Family Relations, and Gender Equality, Justice and Human Rights, and Finance.
Resolutions 456, resolution directing the Senate Committee on Accountability of Public Officers and Investigation to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation into the alleged non-compliance with the provisions of Republic Act 6713, otherwise known as the Code of Conduct and Ethical Standards for Public Officials and Employees relative to required submission of statement of assets, liabilities, and net worth of the incumbent Commission on Elections, COMELEC Chair Andres Bautista.
Refer to the Committee on Accountability of Public Officers and Investigations.
457, resolution creating a special committee on Marawi City Rehabilitation, Senator Pimentel III.
Refer to the Committee on Rules.
Committee report number 148, submitted jointly by the Committees on Education, Arts and Culture, and Public Order and Dangerous Drugs on Senate Bill number 1248, introduced by Senator Maria Lourdes Nancy Binay, entitled An Act Declaring January 25 of every year as a special working holiday throughout the country to commemorate the heroism and sacrifice of the fallen 44 of the Philippine National Police Special Action Force, recommending that it be archived. Senator Escudero.
To the archives. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I was scheduled to deliver a privilege speech today, but I've opted to reserve the schedule for Monday, reschedule on Monday, Mr. President. So with that, Mr. President, instead I move, and with the consent of the Chamber, I move for the consideration of PS Resolution 428, taking into consideration PS Resolution 457.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
May we ask Secretary to read only the title of the measure without prejudice to inserting into the records the entire text of the resolution.
The Secretary is recognized to read the resolution.
Resolution creating a Senate ad hoc committee on the Marawi Reconstruction and Rehabilitation Program.
Mr. President, to sponsor the measure, may we recognize Senator J.V. Ejercito and then Senator Sani Angara to co-sponsor the measure.
Senator J.V. Ejercito is recognized.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. I would like to manifest my support to the proposed Senate Resolution number 457, entitled Resolution Creating a Special Committee on Marawi City Rehabilitation, introduced by our Senate President. I agree with the rationale presented by our Senate President in his proposal to create a special committee in Marawi City Rehabilitation. In fact, Mr. President, for the same reason, I filed Senate Resolution number 428, entitled Resolution Creating a Senate Ad Hoc Committee on the Marawi Reconstruction and Rehabilitation Program, as early as July 18, 2017. I recognize the magnitude of the devastation as a result of the crisis. Thus, it is but right that an ad hoc or a special committee be created in order to oversee and exercise jurisdiction over all matters directly and principally relating to the reconstruction and rehabilitation of Marawi City and other affected areas. Mr. President, after more than 2 months, when the Marawi siege started, challenges surrounding displaced families and the rehabilitation of the city has escalated. There are problems concerning resettlement sites, food and sustenance, health, livelihood, and infrastructure, among others, that we need to resolve immediately. As such, it should be our priority to rebuild the ravaged city and bring back the normalcy to the lives of the affected Filipinos. Mr. President, I believe this is a challenge for us to look beyond the devastation and to look into the proper and efficient way of rebuilding the strife-torn cities such as Marawi. Let us not repeat the shortcomings of the government has committed during the implementation of the Yolanda rehabilitation and recovery programs. More importantly, let us address the problems that the affected areas are facing right now before it is too late and all our efforts become worthless. The people of Marawi have suffered long enough. Many have died, and it is our duty to make sure that those who have survived be given a chance at life. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Ejercito. Majority Leader.
May we recognize Senator Sani Angara to co-sponsor the measure, Mr. President.
Senator Angara is recognized to co-sponsor the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Majority Leader. Dear colleagues, let me manifest my utmost support for this resolution and commend the Senate President and my seatmate, the Chair of the Committees on Housing and Health, Senator J.V. Ejercito, for sponsoring it. Marahil nakakalimutan ng madla na patuloy pa rin ang bakbakan sa Marawi. Marami pa rin sa ating kampo ay sumasabak sa panganib. Na libu-libong bakwit ay nalalagay pa rin sa alanganin. Nararapat na tayong malayo sa putukan, hinahanda na natin ang tulong na ibubuhos ng pamahalaan para sa Marawi. Many evacuees still need help with food, water, clothing, and shelter. There are also recent news reports that as many as 40,000 evacuees have early symptoms of schizophrenia and other mental health disorders. Last July, it was reported that some 18,000 evacuees who were pregnant or had just given birth were faced with unhygienic facilities and lack of prenatal and postpartum care. Paano po ang edukasyon ng mga bata? Paano po ang pag-aalaga sa mga senior citizens at nakakatanda? Ano po yung mga trabaho na babalikan ng mga taga-Marawi? Leaving all these urgent issues unaddressed will surely make it harder to truly rebuild Marawi City. Mahalaga pong mabuo ang special committee na ito para ang mga kababayan natin ay mas mabilis na makakauwi at makakabawi. Nabombahan man ang Marawi, hindi naman nagiba ang kanilang hangaring makatayo muli o ang pangarap nilang madatnan ang isang maunlad, ligtas at mapayapang kinabukasan. Nalalapit ang pagkakataon para makapagsimula muli. Kaya mahalaga na lahat ng Pilipino ay handang tumulong at tumayo katabi ang mga kababayan natin sa Marawi. Sa pamamagitan nitong special committee, tutulong tayo sa pag-rehabilitate sa nasirang infrastruktura, sa pagbalik ng nawalang kabuhayan, sa muling pagpapatakbo ng mga serbisyo at higit sa lahat sa muling pagtayo ng mga nagibang bahay. Ang special committee ay para sa mga napilitang lumisan na makatulong ang bawat Pilipino na ihatid sila pa uwi. Salamat po, Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
May we recognize Senator Joel Villanueva, Mr. President.
Senator Joel Villanueva is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Majority Floor Leader. This is just to associate myself with my seatmates in support to this resolution, and let me also put on record our reiteration to call on this administration to appoint a rehab czar. And I know and I believe this institution will be able to be of great help, considering that we have the former czar of rehab czar of Yolanda, Senator Ping Lacson. We have Senator Gordon, who is the chair of Philippine Red Cross. And I'm hoping and praying, Mr. President, na magawa na po ito as soon as possible. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, with the permission of the Chamber, I move to adopt PS Resolution 457, subject to style.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
So, Mr. President, because of the urgency and with the consent of the Senate President, may I move that we elect the following members of the Special Committee. Chairman, Senator Honasan, members Lacson, Po, Ejercito, and Aquino.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, may I have a 1-minute suspension?
Session is suspended for a minute.
We ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, I move to resume consideration of the following House bills on the creation and dividing barangays in some parts of the country. House Bill 4937 under Committee Report 106, House Bill 4942 under Committee Report 107, House Bill 2924 under Committee Report 108, House Bill 4934 under Committee Report 109, House Bill 4938 under Committee Report 110, House Bill 4935 under Committee Report 111, House Bill 4924 under Committee Report 112, House Bill 4943 under Committee Report 113, House Bill 4923 under Committee Report 114, House Bill 4925 under Committee Report number 119, House Bill 4927 under Committee Report 120, House Bill 4941 under Committee Report 121, and House Bill 4940 under Committee Report 122.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion's approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. The parliamentary status of the measures is that we are now in the period of interpellation. So may we recognize the sponsor, the chairman of the Committee on Local Government, Senator Sari Angara.
Senator Angara, the chairman of the Committee on Local Government, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, there are no other senators who have made reservations to interpolate the measures. So I move to close the period of interpellation, the measures.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion's approved.
Mr. President, considering that there are some committee amendments, I move to open the period of committee amendments on all the measures, but we will take it up one by one, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion's approved.
We introduce the committee amendments. May we recognize the sponsor, Senator Sani Angara.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Angara is recognized to introduce the committee amendments.
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Majority Leader. The first is for Committee Report 106 to create the barangay known as Barangay Care in the city of Tarlac, province of Tarlac. On page 1, line 4, before section 2, the conduct and supervision of plebiscite, to insert a new section, section 2, on territorial boundaries, to include the metes and bounds and technical description of barangay care as an integral part of House Bill 4937, Committee Report 106.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion's approved.
Mr. President, I move that we renumber the succeeding sections accordingly. So move.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion's approved.
Mr. President, on page 1, line 5, after the acronym COMELEC, to insert the phrase on March 14, 1993. So move.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion's approved.
On page 1, lines 8 to 9, after the name CARE, to delete the phrase as proclaimed by the Plebiscite Board of Canvassers on March 14, 1993. So move.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion's approved.
Those are all the amendments for House Bill 4937, Mr. President. I move that we close the period of amendments for House Bill 4937, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion's approved.
Mr. President, we have some amendments for House Bill 4942 This is an act creating a barangay to be known as Barangay Pudo in the municipality of Natonin Mountain Province. The first committee amendment is on page 1, line 4, before Section 2, Conduct and Supervision of Plebiscite, to insert a new section, Section 2, on territorial boundaries, to include the metes and bounds and technical description of Barangay Pudo as an integral part of House Bill 4942 as indicated in Committee Report number 107, and it's flashed on our screen currently, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion's approved.
Mr. President, I move that we renumber the succeeding sections accordingly.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion's approved.
Mr. President, on page 1, line 5, after the acronym COMELEC, to insert the phrase on December 2, 1994, so move.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion's approved.
Mr. President, on page 1, line 7 to 8, after the name Pudo, delete the phrase as proclaimed by the Plebiscite Board of Canvassers on December 2, 1994, so move.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion's approved.
Mr. President, those are the only amendments for House Bill 4942. We now move to House Bill 2924 under Committee Report 108. This is an act creating a barangay to be known as Barangay Cristo Rey in the municipality of Capas, province of Tarlac. On page 1, to delete, the first amendment is on page 1, Mr. President, to delete lines 7 to 15, and in lieu thereof, insert a new section, Section 2, on territorial boundaries, to include the following metes and bounds and technical description of Barangay Cristo Rey as an integral part of House Bill 2924, and as flashed on the screen, Mr. President. So move.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion's approved.
Mr. President, move that we renumber the succeeding sections accordingly.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, on page 2, line 3, after the name Aranguren, insert the phrase on December 13, 2003. So move.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, on page 2, lines 5 to 6, after the name Cristo Rey, to delete the phrase as proclaimed by the Plebiscite Board of Canvassers on December 13, 2003. So move.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, those are the only amendments for Committee Report 106. We now go to Committee Report 109 on House Bill 4934. This is an act creating a barangay to be known as Barangay San Isidro in the municipality of Titay, province of Zamboanga, Sibugay. First amendment, Mr. President, is on page 1, line 4, before Section 2, the Conduct and Supervision of Plebiscite, to insert a new section, Section 2, on territorial boundaries, to include the metes and bounds and technical description of Barangay San Isidro as an integral part of the House bill as indicated in the committee report and flashed currently on the screen, Mr. President. I so move.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move that we renumber the succeeding sections accordingly. I so move.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Those are the only amendments for Committee Report 109, Mr. President. We now go to Committee Report 110 on House Bill 4938. This is the act creating a barangay known as Barangay Poblacion 3 in the municipality of Villanueva, province of Misamis Oriental. Mr. President, the first amendment is on page 1 to delete line 7 to 14, and in lieu thereof, insert the following metes and bounds and technical description of Barangay Poblacion 3 as an integral part of House Bill 4938 as indicated in Committee Report 110 and flashed on the screen at present. So move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Those are the only amendments for Committee Report 110. Now we move to Committee Report 111, Mr. President, on House Bill 4935. This is an act creating a barangay to be known as Barangay Don Albino Taruk in the municipality of Socorro, province of Surigao del Norte. First amendment, Mr. President, is on page 1, line 5, before Section 2. Insert a new section, Section 2, on territorial boundaries to include the metes and bounds and technical description of the barangay as flashed on the screen at present. So move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, we move that we renumber the succeeding sections accordingly. So move.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, on page 1, line 6, after the acronym COMELEC, to insert the phrase on August 27, 1995. So move.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, on page 1, lines 9 to 10, after the family name Taruk, to delete the phrase as proclaimed by the Plebiscite Board of Canvassers on August 27, 1995. So move.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Those are the only amendments, Mr. President, for Committee Report 111. We move to Committee Report 112 on House Bill 4924, an act dividing Barangay Magugpo in the city of Tagum to be known as into 5 distinct barangays to be known as Barangay Magugpo Poblacion, Barangay Magugpo East, Barangay Magugpo West, Barangay Magugpo North, and Barangay Magugpo South. First Amendment, Mr. President, on page 1 to 2, to delete lines 9 to 11 and in lieu thereof, insert the following metes and bounds and technical description of Barangay Magugpo Poblacion as an integral part of the House bill, as flashed on the screen at present, Mr. President. So move.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, on page 2, to delete lines 13 to 26 and in lieu thereof, insert the following metes and bounds and technical description of Barangay Magugpo East as indicated in the committee report and flashed on the screen at present. So move.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
On pages 2 to 3, to delete lines 28, in lieu thereof, insert the following metes and bounds and technical description of Barangay Magugpo West as an integral part of the House bill and as flashed on the screen at present. I so move.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
On page 3, to delete lines 10 to 20 and in lieu thereof, insert the following metes and bounds and technical description of Barangay Magugpo North as an integral part of the House bill and as flashed on screen. I so move.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
On pages 3 to 4, to delete lines 22 to 27 and in lieu thereof, insert the following metes and bounds and technical description of Barangay Magugpo South as an integral part of the House bill and as flashed on the screen. At present, I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
On page 4, line 10, after the name Magugpo, to insert the phrase on May 29, 1994. I so move.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, on page 4, lines 14 to 15, after the word South, to delete the phrase as proclaimed by the Plebiscite Board of Canvassers on September 4, 1994. I so move.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Those are all for that Committee Report 112. And now to Committee Report 113 on House Bill 4943. This is an act dividing Barangay Kanumay in the city of Valenzuela into two distinct and independent barangays to be known as Barangay Kanumay West and Barangay Kanumay East. The First Amendment, Mr. President, is on page 1, to delete line 8 and in lieu thereof, insert the following metes and bounds and technical description of Barangay Kanumay West and Barangay Kanumay East as an integral part of House Bill 4945 and as flashed on the screen at present. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
That is all for Committee Report 113, Mr. President. Thank you. We now go to Committee Report 114 on House Bill 4923. This is an act dividing Barangay Pampanga in the city of Davao into three distinct and independent barangays to be known as Barangay Pampanga, Barangay Alfonso Angliongto Sr., and Barangay Vicente Hizon Sr. First one, Mr. President, is an omnibus amendment to replace the words V. Hizon with Vicente Hizon Sr. This is located on page 1, line 4, on page 2, line 19, page 3, line 11, page 3, line 17, and on page 3, line 25. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, on pages 1 to 2, to delete lines 8 to 14, and in lieu thereof, insert the following metes and bounds and technical description of Barangay Pampanga as an integral part of the House bill. So move. As flashed on the screen, I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
On page 2, to delete lines 6 to 18, and in lieu thereof, insert the following metes and bounds and technical description of Barangay Alfonso Angliongto Sr. as an integral part of the House bill and as flashed on the screen at present. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
On pages 2 to 3, to delete lines 20 to 26, and in lieu thereof, insert the following metes and bounds and technical description of Barangay Vicente Hizon Sr. as an integral part of House Bill 4923 and as flashed on the screen at present. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, on page 3, line 9, after the name Pampanga, to insert the phrase on July 25, 2004. So move.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
On page 3, lines 11 to 12, after the family name Hizon, to delete the phrase as proclaimed by the Plebiscite Board of Canvassers on July 25, 2004. So move.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, we now move to amend the title to read as follows: an act dividing Barangay Pampanga in the city of Davao into three distinct and independent barangays to be known as Barangay Pampanga, Barangay Alfonso Angliongto Sr., and Barangay Vicente Hizon Sr. So move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, that's all for Committee Report 114. Now on Committee Report 119 regarding House Bill 4925. This is an act dividing the one barangay municipality of Dumalneg in the province of Ilocos Norte into three distinct and independent barangays to be known as Barangay Calao, Barangay Cabaritan, and Barangay Kibel. The First Amendment, Mr. President, is on page 1, line 1, after the word of, to delete the words the one and to hyphen. So move.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
On page 1, line 1, after the word barangay, delete the words municipality of. So move.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
On page 1, line 2, before the word barangay, to delete the words the one and to hyphenate. So move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
On page 1, line 2, after the word barangay, to delete the words municipality of. So move.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
On page 2, to delete lines 7 to 9 and section 3, existing boundaries, and in lieu thereof, to insert a new section 3 on territorial boundaries to include the metes and bounds and technical descriptions of Barangay Calao, Barangay Cabaritan, and Barangay Quibel as an integral part of House Bill 4925 as flashed on our screen at present. So move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, on page 2, lines 14 to 15, to replace within 180 with not later than 120.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
And lastly, Mr. President, to amend the title to read as follows: an act dividing Barangay Dumalneg in the municipality of Dumalneg in the province of Ilocos Norte into 3 distinct and independent barangays to be known as Barangay Calao, Barangay Cabaritan, and Barangay Quibel. So move.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
That is all for Committee Report 119. Now for Committee Report 120, Mr. President, on House Bill 4927. This is an act creating the Barangay Upper Pugaan in the municipality of Ditsaan, Ramain, province of Lanao del Sur. First Amendment, Mr. President, is on page 1, line 4, before Section 2, Conduct and Supervision of Plebiscite, to insert a new section, Section 2, on territorial boundaries, to include as metes and bounds and technical description of Barangay Upper Pugaan as an integral part of the House Bill and as flashed on the screen at present. Mr. President, so move.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move that we renumber the succeeding sections accordingly. So move.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, we now move to Committee Report 121 on House Bill 4941. This is an act creating a barangay to be known as Barangay Rizal in the city of Makati. First Amendment is on page 1 to delete line 3 and in lieu thereof insert a new section, Section 2 on territorial boundaries to include the following metes and bounds and technical description of Barangay Rizal as an integral part of House Bill 4941 as flashed on the screen at present. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move that we renumber the succeeding sections accordingly. So move.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, on page 5, line 2, after the acronym COMELEC, to insert the phrase on June 29, 1996. So move.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
On page 5, lines 4 to 5, after the name Rizal, delete the phrase as proclaimed by the Plebiscite Board of Canvassers on June 29, 1996. So move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
That's all for Committee Report 121, Mr. President. For Committee Report 122 on House Bill 4940, this is an act creating a barangay to be known as Barangay Liwon in the municipality of Asipulo, province of Ifugao. First Amendment is on page 1 to delete lines 5 to 8 and in lieu thereof insert a new section, Section 2, on territorial boundaries to include the following metes and bounds and technical description of Barangay Liwon as an integral part of House Bill 4940 as flashed on the screen at present. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
I move to renumber the succeeding sections accordingly. I so move.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, on page 1, line 14, to replace the words within 90 with the words not later than 120. So move.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues.
Thank you, Senator Angara. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move to close the period of committee amendments.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
There are no individual amendments. I move to close the period of individual amendments.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move to approve on second reading House Bill 4937 under Committee Report 106.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move to approve on second reading House Bill 4942 under Committee Report 107.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move to approve on second reading House Bill 2924 under Committee Report 108.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Move to approve on second reading House Bill 4934 under Committee Report 109.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Move to approve on second reading House Bill 4938 under Committee Report 110.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Move to approve on second reading House Bill 4935 under Committee Report 111.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Move to approve on second reading House Bill 4924 under Committee Report 112.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Move to approve on second reading House Bill 4943 under Committee Report 113.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Move to approve on second reading House Bill 4923 under Committee Report 114.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Move to approve on second reading House Bill 4925 under Committee Report 119.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Move to approve on second reading House Bill 4927 under Committee Report 120.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Move to approve on second reading House Bill 4941 under Committee Report 121.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Move to approve on second reading House Bill 4940 under Committee Report 122.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move to suspend consideration of the following House bills.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
I was pertaining to the House bills that I mentioned, Mr. President.
That is correct.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President.
The record will reflect that.
Thank you. Ano, tuloy kayo? Joel? Frank? Tuloy kayo ni Joel? Occupational safety? No? How's Joel? May I have a 1-minute suspension, Mr. President?
Session is suspended.
Mr. President, ready to resume?
Session is resumed.
With the permission of the Chamber, I move to resume consideration of Senate Bill 1439 under Committee Report 60.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
This is the measure on energy virtual one-stop shop. The parliamentary status of the measure is that we are in the period of interpellation. So may we recognize the sponsor, Chairman of the Committee on Energy, Senator Win Gatchalian, and to interpellate the Minority Leader, Senator Dillon.
The Chairman of the Committee on Energy, Senator Win Gatchalian, is recognized to sponsor the measure. Minority leaders recognized to interpellate the Chairman of the Committee. Senator
Thank you,
Patrick
Mr.
Bot.
President. Will the gentleman sponsor yield a few questions?
Well, gladly answer questions from the esteemed Minority Floor Leader, Mr. Chair.
Mr. President, for the record, can we spread into the record of this chamber what is the policy consideration behind the proposed measure?
Mr. President, the proposed measure intends to reduce the permitting process and the number of days that a new power plant has to undergo before it can get its permit to build a new power plant. So currently, Mr. President, it takes about 4 years just to get the permits for a new power plant to get approved. This bill intends to reduce it to 1.5 years by using software and as well as implementing strict timeframes in various government bureaus and offices.
Thank you, Mr. President. May we know what is the difference between this bill and the expanded Anti-Red Tape Act, which is being sponsored by Senator Subiri, and the present Anti-Red Tape Act, which the expanded Anti-Red Tape Act is trying to amend. So, and then I think there are other measures which the good gentleman has sponsored on the floor, again designed to expedite approvals of energy projects.
Yes.
May we know if there's any difference or how
yes.
this bill now under the consideration will differ from these other bills?
Yes, Mr. President. There are two main distinctions between the expanded anti-red tape bill and the energy virtual one-stop shop. Number one, the energy one-stop shop only deals with power generation projects. It already assumes that the company has already been incorporated, underwent the necessary incorporation procedures, and then the company is now intends to build power projects. So this bill only deals with the permitting process of new power plants. It doesn't deal with corporate papers or the corporate side of the power generation projects. The second major difference is this bill also deals with the permits simultaneously. In the anti-red tape bill, it only deals with one government agency at a time, while this bill actually deals with multiple agencies all at the same time, because a permitting procedure undergoes almost 70 different government offices and bureaus. So it now harmonizes the flow of paperwork when you put up a power project. Let me just, Mr. Chair, very quickly, let me just point the esteemed Minority Floor Leader to a table.
Yes, please.
This is actually, we identify the salient differences between the two bills. Like I mentioned earlier, number one, it says that it applies to all permits of power generation projects. So EVOS just deals with power generation projects. EVOS also deals with quasi-judicial entities.
Can we have that? Yeah.
Okay. The proposal deals with judicial entities such as ERC and NCIP, while the Expanded Red Tape Act doesn't deal with quasi-judicial entities. Another difference, it provides another difference of the EVOS bill. It provides a specific time frame for mother agencies and other attached agencies and subordinates. So it also identifies already the time frame that paperwork needs to go through in various different agencies. In the slide, we identified, for example, DOE. DOE is only allowed 60 days in terms of processing. NCIP is allowed 10 days for certificate of no objection, and 75 days for FPIC certification. The LGUs, 15 days, and the DOTR, another 15 days. Another key difference, the time frame applies to multiple permits and transactions, because a permit to build a power plant have to undergo different agencies. These agencies are now harmonized in one process flow. The key difference with the anti-red tape, the anti-red tape only deals with single agencies, one at a time. Another difference is this is a cloud-based system for generation projects. So these are the main difference, Mr. President.
All right. I noticed that the third paragraph, or under the energy virtual one-stop shop, it provides, as explained, a specific time frame for mother agencies and their attached subordinate agencies, such as DOE, NCIP, LGUs, DOTR, to act on the documents before the respective offices. On the other hand, the expanded anti-red tape bill allows a maximum of 30 working days to act on permits, licenses, certifications, etc. Honestly, Mr. President, I could not see the difference between the two. Between the two comparisons. One provides for a specific time frame for DOE, NCIP, and then the other hand, the expanded red tape bill applies to all other agencies with a maximum of 30 working days to act upon permits, etc. Can we, honestly, I'm confused as to when the expanded anti-red tape bill will come in and when the energy virtual one-stop shop come in. Are we saying that the energy virtual one-stop shop is taken out of the expanded anti-red tape bill?
Mr. President, let me give a concrete example. For example, I am a company, a new company that intends to build a power plant here in the Philippines.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to incorporate first my company, go through the process of incorporation. I think that's where the expanded anti-red tape bill will come in, because the expanded anti-red tape bill deals with incorporation and setting up of companies. As soon as the company is already incorporated, and now I have to undergo the necessary permitting process to build that power plant, and this is where the EVOS bill will come in, because the EVOS bill specifically only deals with putting up of power plants, not the incorporation of the company.
All right.
And let me just point out, Mr. President, in the third box, no, I'll point specifically to the LGU. In the anti-red tape bill, no, each LGU level is given 30 days to do their paperwork. But upon consultation with ULAP and the different LGU organizations, we can actually squeeze that in 15 days. Because ultimately, it's the provincial level that approves the permit. No? Even though it has to go through the barangay, the municipality, at the end of the process, it's really the provincial level. So upon consultation, they all agreed that why not just squeeze everything in the provincial level, because at the end, they'll be the ones approving it. So this is only one example how the EVOS bill intends to harmonize and make the time frame more efficient in different government organizations.
Mr. President, I note with interest on that third bracket of the EVOS bill, I mean, of what is being demonstrated here in the board, NCIP.
NCIPs, Mr.
This
President.
National Commission on Indigenous People. And under the law, no project can move without the FPIC or the free prior informed consent. These 75 days here, by the way, what is CNO first, 10 days? What is CNO? Can we go back to that? What does CNO stand for?
CNO is Certificate of No
Certificate of No Objection.
Non-overlap.
Non-overlap. And the FPIC, there's is it 75 days?
Yes.
All right.
Free prior informed consent.
Free prior informed consent. And this would apply only to energy-related activities.
Yes, Mr. President.
Now, you know, I'll tell you an actual experience, Mr. President. I spearheaded the building of a dam in my home province, funded by the Korean government, costing about 11 billion, which will irrigate about 32,000 hectares, will double the rice production of Panay, will benefit 22 municipalities. The dam is both hydro, I mean for water and electricity power, all those smaller megawatt. It took the Philippine government through the National Irrigation Authority exactly 2 years to get the FPIC. I must emphasize that this is a government project. I must emphasize that this will benefit the farmers. I must emphasize that this will provide food security. And yet, the NCIP took 2 years before they could issue the free prior informed consent. If we had that law at the time, would this have been prevented? This is principally a dam, but it has a hydroelectric component.
Mr. President, 2 years is actually quite fast already. Considering during the two or three hearings that we conducted, we have heard of a lot of horror stories, no? Ranging from 2 years all the way to be honest about it, to 20 years. There's this anecdote that I always use during this talk that there's a hydro power project in Palawan, Mr. President, and the proponent is a British national. And it took him almost 20 years just to get his permits approved, in which the NCIP component, I think, is almost 10 years plus in that procedure. You know, it took so long that he remarried twice in the Philippines, and after remarrying twice, he had another girlfriend because the second wife didn't work out. But it's really just permitting alone, it's really a very complex project. And it's true that it's very consistent in all of our consultation that NCIP is one of the biggest hindrances in terms of permitting. And let me just point out the good minority floor leader to the screen. And this is actually the current process right now of getting your NCIP permit, specifically the free prior informed consent. If you notice, there are a lot of consultations, a lot of assemblies, a lot of consensus building, and we will not remove the due process and the consultation process. We will just put time frames in those consultations and due process. And
And if the consultation, whatever is the objective of the consultation is, and usually they require the consent of all the barangays affected by the project, and every single family or whatever you have there to agree before they issue the prior free informed consent. What will happen if no such agreement is reached?
Just to continue, Mr. President, before I answer that, upon consultation with DOE, the Department of Energy, and using their experience and their observation, this can actually be reduced from an uncertain amount of days to 75 working days. And in case that they will not agree, they would have to write down specific reasons as to why they don't agree with the application.
And what will you do those specific reasons? Assuming that they provide such reasons, who will judge whether or not the failure to provide the FPIC within a 75-day period is justified or not? And if it's not justified, what is the effect?
In our concept, as if the reasons are valid, then I think the power projects, the power proponent will just admit and take it that the reasons are valid and true. If the reasons are not valid and true, then they can actually go up to the courts, or in this case, if the quasi-judicial entity is involved in that, then they can file administrative charges against the organization. However, Mr. President, we're open to still tightening the. We're open to suggestions and how to tighten the procedure in this provision.
Generally, Mr. President, I favor the limitation imposed on the period, because it can be unreasonable. And I cited to you, Mr. President, the example of how unreasonable NCIP could be in that actual experience that we had. But just again to go back to the question, who determines the validity of the grounds for the non-issuance of the FPIC?
In this case, Mr. President, it's the National Commission on Indigenous People. They're the ones issuing the certification.
No, if they're the ones, then you are back to the same thing. They will keep the NCIP will have the tendency to sustain their field people where the delay is taking place. And you know, the reality is that you can rationalize this to no end. If it is the NCIP who will judge whether or not a reason is valid, I can assure you that there will always be a ground to rationalize the non-issuance of the FPIC. We must have, you know, either we just have an absolute deadline, in which case if no action is taken, it's deemed approved, or we have somebody else, some other agency act on the validity of the rationale for the non-issuance, and justice, and let the law operate in the sense that it is deemed approved if that no action is taken.
We take the suggestion of the good minority floor leader to have maybe qualifiers in terms of the reasons to deny a project, and also come up with tighter rules, no, in terms of why the project will be denied.
Yeah.
And also another suggestion, point well taken, is a automatic approval if ever it goes beyond a certain time frame.
Yes. Have somebody else, some outside agency, judge as to whether or not the reason for the non-issuance of the FPIC is valid, which agency should not be the NCIP itself, and if it is not valid, to provide the rule that it is deemed approved without the actual NCIP acting on it, because we have heard of horror stories, including this agency giving titles to the mansion house in Baguio City.
I acknowledge the nothing beats the actual experience of the good minority floor leader regarding this issue, and we acknowledge also the suggestions, and definitely the suggestions will improve this provision.
If this bill becomes law, is there need for additional manpower? In other words, would the implementation of the law require manpower addition in the DOE?
Yes, Mr. President. In the suggestion of the DOE, they suggested to create an investment promotion office that will handle this this project, and definitely because it deals with multiple departments, multiple agencies. In fact, in the whole process of getting a permit to build a power plant, DOE is only 10% of the entire process. So coordination really is a heavy task. So DOE also suggested that a special office should be created for this project.
Is the appropriation here of 50 million include already the budget necessary for the possible additional personnel? There is an appropriation on section 21. 50 million for the initial implementation shall be taken from the current appropriations of the DOE, and thereafter to be included in the GAA.
Yes, yes, Mr. President, and this also includes the creation of that web-based software that will link the various government agencies and bureaus. And let me just point out that the software is an integral part of this bill because, like I mentioned, it deals with 70 different government bureaus and agencies, and we need an automated system to track down the paperwork, to coordinate electronically with the various government agencies.
Thank you, Mr. President, and we express our appreciation to the good sponsor for the clarity that he has provided to the measure. In the spirit of interpretation, we do hope that in those areas where we have a agreement on the need to improve the bill, particularly on the free and informed, FPIC, free prior informed consent can be strengthened so that we can achieve the purpose for which this bill is being proposed. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, esteemed Minority Floor Leader. Thank you.
Thank you, Majority Leader. Mr. President, I move to close the period of interpellation. There are no other members who have signified intention to
with the
interpellate.
permission of the Majority Leader and with the permission of our colleagues in the floor, may I ask 2 or 3 questions to the proponent of this bill?
We have no objections, Mr. President.
We're then happy to receive some questions.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to find out, I was reading the bill, it caught my attention. You have Section 7, an interagency technical working group. And you have how many departments who will be members of this technical working group?
Yes.
Wouldn't this be another layer in the bureaucracy?
Mr. President, there are 19 different agencies because we counted the agencies that are part of the application for power projects. And when we were discussing this bill, it's very important that the initial phase of this bill, we have to gather all of these different agencies and thresh out what are the procedures that are not covered by law and what are the procedures that can be taken out. I think it's important in the initial phase of this bill, Mr. President, that to get all of these agencies together.
So what will be the job of this interagency?
Basically, the most important aspect here is to look at the process. And we also took note that during the hearing, some of the process are being done by practice but not by law. No? So because of the evolution of this process, a lot of the process are being imposed by the different agencies outside of DOE. But DOE does not have any control or any say whether those processes can be taken out or not. So we all agreed in the hearing that in the initial phase, at least in the initial phase of this project, all of these agencies should sit down all at the same time, look at the process, and streamline the process.
So we are creating an interagency to study the process.
Yes, Mr. President.
And that will help reduce the number of days.
Yes, Mr. President. Yes, Mr. President. Well, there's already a prescribed process from DOE, Mr. President, to be honest about it. But since DOE, for example, part of the approval process is PNP, no? The Philippine National Police. Apparently, when you put up a power plant, you still need to go to PNP to get a permit, which, frankly speaking, doesn't have any relation to putting up a power plant. And since DOE doesn't have any control over PNP, the process remains until now. And that process actually takes up a lot of time also.
And the PNP is part of this interagency?
Yes, through it's part of the task force.
I don't see it on page 5, section 7. Nevertheless, the point that I'm just driving at, Mr. Chairman, is why not just limit the number of permits? Why create interagencies? If we're serious about reducing red tape, creating interagencies, in my experience, is another form of red tape.
Mr. President, we took note of that. In fact, I was listening intently during the discussion on the expanded anti-red tape bill, and we brought forth that discussion during the hearings. However, there are other processes in this application that is really quite important, no? It's very difficult also to remove them completely. So one of the tasks of the task force really, instead of removing, why not just reduce the time frame? And aside from reducing the time frame, simultaneously allow application of
I understand.
of
Would the
permits.
gentleman be willing in the future? I mean, should this be in the law? Or would this just be an administrative issue? Why not just limit the time frame for
we
all
did.
these government agencies and not create an interagency by law?
I think the
Because when you
interagency.
create interagencies, it adds to the bureaucracy. There is an additional budget. There is an additional cost. It's an additional red tape.
I think, Mr. President,
And then you're going to create another secretariat. And then we will require them to meet how so often. Based on, I think in the private sector, which the gentleman came from, the least that you do is create interagencies in your, I suppose, in your business, in your companies, right? Decisions are just made.
Right.
And you don't pass it on to a committee all the time.
Right. Mr. President, what we intend here really is to harmonize the process. No? And
So we are not harmonizing the process in the bill. We're creating an agency to harmonize the process.
Yes, Mr. President, and to study further the
To
process.
study further. So baka you study na yan 4 years, plus 4 years yung to get a permit for the power plant, maging 8 years pa.
Hindi naman, Mr. President. I think in the initial
That is my
phase.
concern.
Yep.
And with regard to the bill on the bill that was discussed earlier, my objection to that bill also is creating another interagency
What we can do, Mr.
to
Chair,
cut
is
red tape.
maybe we can do is in the initial phase. Actually, the intention here, Mr. President, is to to create the task force in the initial phase.
So let's say their lifespan is interagency for 6 months lang.
Something to that effect.
Maybe we should include that in the bill.
Yeah.
That
We'll take
they
note
have
of
a
that,
life of
Mr.
6
President.
months or 3 months, and after they identify, then we just implement.
We'll take note of that, Mr. President.
Yes, because most of the sections really in the bill are with regard to this interagency. If you look at it, you're creating an interagency of 19 different government agencies. There are more than 100 interagencies already of government, and that's why you have a lot of red tape and admin cost. So that's one, and then you're creating a secretariat.
Maybe we can, we'll take note of the limited lifespan of the interagency.
Yes.
It's really
And then the succeeding sections talk about the responsibilities of the interagency, functions of the interagency, duties of the interagency. So I do not see, as a layman and looking at energy projects, how this will reduce red tape so far. The only section that seems to be, that reduces red tape is the limitation for local government units on the number of days.
yes, and also in
Why don't we say na lang na in every of these department, similar to how we're treating the LGUs, 15 calendar days lang. Okay, lahat kayo, 15 calendar days lang. Why not do it as simple as that?
In Section 3, Mr. President, we identified specific time frames for different government agencies. This is also in consultation with.
So if we did that already, why the need for the interagency? Sabihin na lang natin, limitado na all these departments. I mean, something to that effect.
We'll take note of that, Mr. President.
Yes. Well, I guess that's it. Well, thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Chairman and Majority Leader.
Thank you.
I will
Thank
have
you,
no
Mr.
further
President.
questions. I just look forward to the committee amendments
Okay.
later on. Thank you.
Meron ka ba committee amendments? Sherwin? Suspend na muna.
Suspend na muna.
Move to close the period of interpellation, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
I move to suspend consideration of Senate Bill 1439 under Committee Report 60.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Sa'yo. Wala pa rin. We have a few minutes of suspension, Mr. President.
Session is suspended for a few minutes.
Where's everybody, Lisa? I thought they were in the lounge. They're not there. Coco's not here.
Journalist.
Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, may I be allowed a few housekeeping chores? Senator Villar has requested that she be elected as an additional member of the Special Committee on the Marawi Rehabilitation. So if there is no objection, I move that we elect Senator Villar as another member.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
And also for the record, the Senate President Pimentel and Senator Subiri would like to submit their respective co-sponsorship speeches on this particular resolution, Resolution 457. So I move that it be inserted into the records, Mr. President.
Noted.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to adjourn the session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Monday, August 14, 2017.
Session is adjourned till Monday, August 14, 3 p.m. Okay, see you Monday.